Hey everyone, we're back at it with another pair. This one's a pair of Church's shoes that have had some previous work done. It looks like possibly a number of times already with half soles, and we're going to take them apart and really see what the heck's going on inside. I hope it's not another pair where we open it up and it's just a nightmare internally that we didn't see originally. So far it's not looking pretty, but let's check it out. Alright everyone, so as you can tell, these have been half soled before and not even stitched or anything like that, so hopefully it's not too much of a mess. I definitely see that internally it may have been where they kind of cut the welt a little bit and everything, and so it's going to come unstitched regardless. So thankfully we're re-welting them anyways, but let's see what they've got. So looks like the previous cobbler had used cat's paw top lifting material on it, which is this little rubber piece that we're about to peel off. Cat's Paw is kind of an older brand that has been bought, sold, and traded a number of times between other sole manufacturers, and the old ones were great back in the day, but by today's standards, honestly, it's not all that great. It still has a lot of rubber flexibility to it, kind of ripped right there a little bit. So it's good, but not the best, and you know, some of you guys out there who are familiar with the cat's paw whole heels that they make out there with the little white dots, they look cool, but keep in mind those have been discontinued for some time and may be rotting already, so you might not want to get those heels, just as a heads up. So looks like a bunch of wire nails shot all over into the heel, so these little wires there, the machine just shoots them all in to hold that top lift on. I mean, we do that sometimes, but very, very specific reasons to do it, not just over every single top lift, which it looks like this cobbler probably was one of those that always liked using the auto solar for the wire nails, and they're kind of in random places. He had a few here in the center too, which is weird, but whatever. We're going to toss those. Let's see, heel base. See what's going on under here. Heel base is definitely peeling apart. It looks like it's in still pretty good shape all around. Yeah, it's just kind of peeling all over the place and stuff. So still in good I guess you can say. Double check this one. Yeah, it looks like it's holding up pretty well, so we're not needing to replace the heel base, but definitely want to get everything glued up. It looks like they used fiberboard and leather. Yeah, so this top piece is leather, this is fiberboard, and it looks like the middle one is also fiberboard out of the three main layers. So it's kind of interesting to see on a Church's that it's not a solid leather heel base. It's fiberboard and leather. Got some more of these wire nails, but these are from the factory actually. These are really thick wire nails to hold the heel bases in place and everything. We're going to secure the heel bases back on a little bit differently than using the wire nail most likely, but I got to really see what's going on internally before I could really say for sure. Alright, so typically on these kinds of shoes I've got all the wire nails out, but we would use a knife to kind of split the sole from the welt, and if we're re-welting the shoes, we could actually start pulling the sole back and undoing the welt as well with the sole, instead of having to take those two steps. But because a previous cobbler did do these, before I start really trying to pull on that welt or anything, I'm gonna have to take off the sole, like as if we were just resoling these without replacing the welt. And because they didn't stitch this half sole, I'm just using my heel pry, get under there, and there we go. Peels right off. I did put some solvent on there, obviously, to deactivate the adhesive, so you saw how easy that thing peeled off. Now the little small section back here, right where the stitches are still intact from the factory. these I will cut through, obviously. So thankfully it doesn't look like it's too much major damage. It does look like it needs some cleaning up and everything, but still not the best thing to see as far as previous Cobbler not really doing much to clean out anything. It looks like he may have just glued that cork in, however, which happens. At least it's not a bunch of super glue, honestly, in there, but yet we have to see what's going on with the other shoe, because the other shoe has that going on. And it doesn't look like he really had much super glue in there, but it does also feel like maybe there was some. There's some wax caked on and everything, and so there may have been some super glue used there. Hopefully it's nothing too terrible. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but make sure everything's peeling up okay. It's always a mystery sometimes when a previous cobbler gets their hands on a pair of shoes or boots underneath. And even sometimes from the factory too. Like some factories often offer factory refurbishing, which is fine, but most factory refurbishing, they automatically replace the welts. And the problem with that is that they use a machine to restitch a new welt. However, you know, it might sound good and everything. The machines create new holes in the uppers, which the welt is stitched through and everything, and shortens the life expectancy of the shoes overall. So most of those companies actually have a limited amount of times that they can resole a pair of shoes or boots, because they're re-welting it every single time, when you don't need to re-welt it that often. You only need to re-welt it maybe once every, honestly I would say once every 3 to 4 resoles is what you would really need to replace the welt, unless it was really chopped up or you really wore it out. But even then, like in our case, we're going to be re-welting these. We're going to hand stitch it, so we're going to make it into all the original factory holes without creating new ones. But man, there is a lot of these little nails here on the back edge. So if you're wondering why the nails in the back, these are 270-degree welt, meaning that the welt is only up to here. So the sole is stitched all the way around like this to this end. This very back edge heel is not stitched, it's nailed in. And they do that because when you nail this back edge, instead of stitching it, you can make it a more thinner profile look on the back edge of the heel. Otherwise, if you have a full 360 welt, typically this back edge would end up being wider to be able to fit that welt in there and everything. But we're not redoing this back edge or anything unless we have to. Once I kind of take this apart, see what's going on. Man, I'm kind of curious to see how many nails there are in here. Okay, so this here, if you're wondering, this is called the heel rand, and it's kind of like a buffer and a guide to help guide where the sole's going to go. And it acts as a buffer in a lot of cases with, say, Western boots, for example, for the nails to hold in better as well. In this case, you definitely want to make sure the nails are holding in place nicely. And then we got that plastic here that can go in the trash. If you ever see this plastic sticking out just a little bit on the corner, you're perfectly fine to just yank it out and rip it and throw it away, because this is actually a plastic that goes over top of the shoe to protect the leather while the shoes are being worked on. And so once the shoes are all done and they remove the plastic, everything that was tucked in underneath like this here is still underneath there, and it just lingers. It doesn't cause any kind of harm. Sometimes you might have a piece sticking out somewhere and you can literally just grab it and pull it and not get in trouble for damaging the shoe at all. But we're going to pull the rand off here. Make sure to mark it. So it's alright, so we got this marked up and everything, so it's the right foot. Make sure we keep everything together. As far as these little brass nails that I was pulling out that I was holding the rand and the sole back edge here, there are 15 of these suckers, so quite a few. A couple little loose tacks here we'll have to replace later too. These tacks here, we're going to leave those because that's what holds the upper and everything at the back edge of the heel. And now that we see there's no major issues, other than, see, like I said, there's some areas that the welt was cut a little bit where the stitching is starting to split. I haven't even started cutting the welt, but we're going to go ahead and start undoing the stitches and just cutting through them carefully. And then after that, they're going off for a Swedish Bath. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of undo this whole welt everywhere and take apart the other shoe. If I come across any kind of weird problems or anything, I'm going to go ahead and definitely show you guys, just because, again, I'm not sure what's going on under this one. It doesn't look like it's anything terrible. It's probably going to be the same exact thing as this shoe here, with just some added super glue. But if anything comes up, I'll definitely show you. Otherwise, we'll see you when it's time to give these a bath. Alright, everyone, so I got the other one apart. Nothing too horrible, thankfully. So it looks like maybe just a little bit of super glue was used in some of the areas, but one of the problems why I'm assuming that the cobbler had to, they shaved down this section a little bit too much on their trimmer, and it kind of cut through the stitches, and you can see it's kind of coming apart there. Now, one thing I'm going to have to do is I started taking apart the welts here, and obviously I was going to give these a bath, but this whole thing is wanting to come apart. It looks like maybe what the cobbler had done at some point was just possibly you know, cut through some of the stitching. My biggest dilemma right now is I have a feeling I may have to call this gentleman, and we may have to replace that footbed with the gemming. And I just had this same exact problem where another cobbler got into it and caused some damage to it and stuff, and this is just coming apart so horribly that I may have to call the customer and say, we've got two options. Either we're going to have to give you a refund or replace that footbed with a new leather one and a gemming as well. And it's just my luck that this is now the second pair within a short time span that I have to do that with and everything. So it's yeah, it's exciting. So I'm going to go ahead and give this gentleman a call. Obviously, if this video is up, the gentleman had gone through with it and said, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. But if not, we're just going to scrap the video altogether. But or maybe at least let you guys see what's going on inside and why sometimes some dilemmas occur. And it's because, again, this is starting to separate here. Problem is, you can see that footbed is just rotting, and the previous guy, he caused a little bit of damage on it. And yeah, so we'll be back in a little bit if the customer decides to go through with it. So I thought my camera was recording. Turns out it only took photos. But taking apart the other one, looks like we'll have to patch it up a little bit here as well with the hole to kind of help reinforce it and everything. Again, we're not replacing the liner. We're just going to add a little reinforcement so it doesn't start wearing through that upper and becomes a hole out here on this side. But I want to point out real quick that this liner here is only stitched down where the welt is and the upper. So, like, for example, you can see the stitching of the liner here. It's just to hold the liner together because it's two sections at least, or, you know, a good few pieces. Looks like 1, 2, 3 pieces of the liner itself, not including the tongue chunk or anything. But the liner is just glued up, so I'm gonna have to go through and glue everything back together as well, get that patched up and all that kind of good stuff. The heel counter on these is a leather right there, which is nice, and I checked the toe counter is also a leather. It's glued up pretty good, but I was able to open it up just enough to see that there is a piece of leather there for the toe counter, and it's a really tough, strong toe counter on this, so that's pretty nice on that. So gonna go ahead and clean up a little bit more. There's like some lint that I guess the Swedish Bath didn't quite reach down to the toe, so definitely be able to clean that out as well, get it glued up and start well, I'm gonna have to let it actually cure overnight, because what I do want to do is do a little light conditioning even on this liner too, so that it doesn't keep cracking too much. And then of course right in these areas here where the welt and everything is going to be stitched. But I'm gonna in the meantime trace out the footbeds so that they fit exact, and we'll continue on. Alright everyone, so I kind of jumped the gun with these because I got to move a little bit quicker, and I was hoping to kind of show this. But so this is the new footbed that's going to go in here that I've got, and because these are what are called hand welted, they don't have a gemming in here, which is usually what the welt and everything is kind of stitched together to. But because these are hand welted, you actually have to splice the leather footbed like that there. Now there are a few different methods. I know there's a few shoemakers or cobblers out there that are gonna be saying, oh, why'd you do it that way? Because one way is that you slice it from this angle here and open up the flap, as you can see right there. But actually this pair, I looked closer, it turns out actually it was sliced from the outside edge, kind of like I did here, which is a little uncommon, but that's a thing too. And I already stitched one of them up, so there's that patch that I did and everything like that. Obviously it doesn't look perfect quite yet, but yeah, that we still have to make sure that this is all flattened out. We've got to get it sanded up and then get that shank in there and everything. Still have to nail the back edge down because it's not quite nailed down, but we're gonna have to get these ones stitched in there before we do all that. And it's always fun just because it takes a lot of going back and forth, wiggling these around, trying to get them to line up just right and everything, and especially because I have to stitch while trying to align everything, it gets a little tricky. But now it's time to stitch the welt. I had it in the welt itself in some water. That helps soften up that welt so that it's a little bit easier and more pliable. Just gotta make sure it's all wiped down. But that way it makes it a lot easier for the welt to twist and turn, especially around that toe area here and everything, and makes it way easier to stitch because I have to force the needle through the welt. I'm going to go through one of the original holes here on the shoe itself and then force it through that fresh new footbed there. So it's going to take a little bit of effort, but go ahead and get it started at least, because it takes a little while to get it started, and I don't want to have to waste your guys' time watching me get it started at least, but you'll see what it looks like as I'm progressing. Alright, maybe I'll show you guys a little bit of measuring at least. So I've got the thread pulled through, so the loose end, the end that's not connected to the bobbin right here, pull a little bit extra out, get some slack in there, but we have to measure it out so that we don't have too short of a thread. In other words, the way we measure them out, just as a precaution, is that we wrap it around the shoe, at least the area that gets stitched, 2.5 times. That's how much we want to have, just in case, as a precaution. And it's just like a ballpark estimate. Looks like I made it just a little bit longer, but better to have it longer than shorter, so that way we don't end up having to restart any kind of stitching or anything like that. And I'm using what's called a jerk needle here. I'll show you guys in a second. Get it through. There we go. And this is one of the challenging parts, is getting everything to line up with one of these. With a shoe with a gemming is a little bit easier. Still has its challenges, but this especially definitely has the footbed shifting around so much, and always makes it easier if you have an original last. But because we're redoing it and the goal is to recreate the shoe, especially to how it's broken in, if we use an original last, it goes back to the factory settings, I guess you can call it. And so want to try to follow the original patterns as much as possible on these shoes. I don't remember what the stitch style is called exactly, but I think it's like a saddle stitch. But this is that jerk needle, if you haven't seen it before, right there. So it's got this little hook on the end. So I'll go through the welt, make sure I find the original hole there, go through the welt, go through the shoe where the original hole was, and straight through that new leather footbed right there. Grab my little loop, pull it through, and then the loose end goes through the loop, and then I just tighten it all down. So there we go. And I just got to do that all the way around through a few dozen stitches. Alright everyone, so we got through all the stitching and everything. We're down at the end. I clipped everything off, so I'm gonna have a little bit of extra. So there's that string from one tip to the other. That's how much I just cut off, and then we've got these extra strands. So it's a little much that I just did, but again, better be a little bit longer than too short. I mean, if it is too short, it's definitely something that can be taken care of, but you know, it's not the ideal thing that we're after, in other words. And yeah, so these are my gloves that I just snipped off some. They usually, what I want to try to make are, because with stitching welt, it really wears out the hands and fingers. I mean, especially if you're doing like multiple pairs at a time, it's, I mean, your hands are hurting. So at least for now, I had to get these cheap leather gloves and cut these fingers off, because I still have to be able to grab and everything and all that kind of stuff, so that I can tighten everything down nicely. But eventually I'll make some proper little finger guards and stuff that slip onto the individual fingers. Usually it's my pinky and this one that get the most wear on my left hand. The right hand, my right hand's a little more used to, it's got used to doing stuff, so like as far as like getting beaten up and everything like that, it's got like tougher skin. The left one, however, I don't know, still wears down a little bit more, even though this one's more scarred up with a lot of stuff going on. And yes, I got tons of scars, obviously. So I just pulled that thread through here, put a knot in on the inside, and clip off this little edge piece here, just a little leather patch that we used up and everything. And so now I can clip this. Now these I'm leaving a little bit longer, because we are going to trim them up and skive them and everything once we start putting a heel rand on the back here and everything for guiding the sole, and adds a little bit of a buffer and reinforcement on it. But yeah, that way once I get the welts to align just right with the heel rand, that leather piece that will go right here, it'll either splice into it or butt right up against it and everything. So I'm going to leave these a little bit long for now, but I do definitely need to add some tacks in the back of the heel, which are my tacks. Make sure everything's lining up all good and stuff. Looks good on the inside. Yeah. I mean, I like the look of it on the inside and everything. It kind of hugs the heel when you have it like this way, a little bit differently, so that's always nice to have. But all right, okay, got our first little nail in. Now I hate reaching in to grab these little tacks from its container, so I gotta lay them out. These little tiny tacks are super sharp, and you're always stabbing yourself with them. So go. We don't need too many at the moment. We just need a couple to hold everything down, because if we've got too many and we still have to run nails in for the rand also, as well as the sole, you've got too many nail heads that are butting into each other way too much. So definitely want to be a little bit cautious about using too many nails. Sometimes becomes a problem. I know that we pulled a bunch of nails out of this one, so it's nothing terrible if we do, but oh, come on. And these tacks are very delicate. Oh, there it goes. Went and bent on us. Just a little shift in the leather and the whole thing bends. So I'll have to pull that one out. Let's get a reinforcement there. Alright, see. They're supposed to bend, but sometimes they prematurely bend, and we don't want to be causing any kind of issues like that or anything. And if you're wondering, yes, the background may have changed a little bit. We have relocated the shop. So if you're just tuning in for the first time and you're here in Colorado, we used to be in the Denver Tech Center area, and it was a very, very quick last-minute move where we weren't quite ready for it. We needed the expansion anyways, but we weren't really prepared to do it that soon. So, but yeah. So now, see, we've got all those little nails sticking out over there. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with them. All right, everyone. So I've kind of had to move a little bit quicker. So I've already got the cork filled in there. The shank put in everything. Everything's all stitched up. I did do kind of more of like a closed channel stitching right there. So what I mean by closed, it's not an open channel like this one here that we have to do on rubber soles where we pre-channel it and then stitch. This one is cut by the machine while we're stitching it, so it's a razor going in instead of actually grinding out a chunk of it. And then on the back edge of the heel, I've gone ahead and got the nails on there and everything. It's glued up and ready to be stuck together. So I did look over the original heel bases. They're still in great shape, actually, surprisingly considering everything else. I mean, I've gone through them a few times and everything, and they just needed some glue work done a little bit here and there, cleaned up, and they're ready to go. Actually, I need to put them in the oven. But yeah, I'll get the heel bases on. As far as any kind of coloring that we're going to do on the sole, we're probably just going to keep them kind of a neutral and everything. I'm just going to kind of clean it up a little bit in some areas. I do still need to trim the sole down just a little bit more, just because this welt, this is what's called a 1/2 inch welt, which usually they come a 1/2 inch or a 5/8 inch width altogether when it's still sitting flat. And it's still a little on the wider side, you can see right there. I tried getting that stitch as close as I can to the upper, so definitely have to grind down just a little bit more of that sole and everything, which I prefer to do, especially because on these I had to replace the footbed, the welt, and everything. I prefer to let the machine get as close as it possibly can to the shoe, and then later on cut off what I need to as far as the sole goes, because it's a little wide right now. The sole itself, just looking at the shoe, just kind of bulges out a little too much for a shoe that's supposed to be kind of lower profile. As you can see on the back edge of the heel, after the rand went on and everything, I followed the exact same lines. It's fairly narrow, and then all of a sudden it gets really wide. So definitely have to make sure I grind that sole down some more and take it down a notch or two. And yeah, so for now I got to get this all together so that it starts curing, and so that I can move on to getting everything ground down and the toplets put on. But yeah, that's what the inside is looking like right there. See those nails? They're all crooked and bent. They turn into hooks one way or another, so that this back edge is on there really good. So quite a few nails going in. You've got nails that are holding the upper to the footbed. Then you've got the nails that go through the rand, the upper, and into the footbed. And then finally these brass ones here that you see, those are going through the sole, the rand, and the upper itself, and into the footbed. So different lengths and everything, different types of nails. Definitely have to alternate between 3 different lengths, in other words. So continue on and see you back in a few. Alright everyone, since I have to again move kind of quick, got the heels on. You saw me run the nails in and everything over here. Edging's all taken care of on them. and everything. There's a few little spots that I have to make sure I get taken care of on the uppers, get them all cleaned up. It's kind of all wonky. I don't know what kind of polish this guy may have used or something or what, but yeah, they're all over the place, so I gotta make sure that's all cleaned up. Now, because we've got all these nails, obviously you can see like the nail heads and then the gripper nails or the clinch nails and everything. Gotta make sure to put in some 3/4 length insoles that I just cut out of sheet of leather. And this little spot here, I always like to skive it just a little bit, because this is right where the ball of the foot kind of hits, and some people feel it, some people don't. Anyways, like I was saying, so usually this skiving here I'll do on a smooth or a more straight surface, like a piece of tile or a piece of glass. But unfortunately, we still haven't, I don't know where it was. I just had it the other day and it vanished, so gotta do it this way. But anyways, that's kind of what it does. It thins out that little edge there and everything, and because otherwise that leather is a little thick. Even though it's thin, it is a little thick when you're applying, you know, a few 100 pounds of mass, in other words, right at the ball of the foot there, and you're gonna feel that little bit of transition sometimes. Not everyone feels it, but some people do, and just as an extra precaution, I always like to skive that down and everything. Usually, say like on a Western boot, for example, they do just a little heel pad that's only about that big right there, and it comes out perfectly where it's not right under your heel or anything, so it doesn't apply nearly as much pressure. So usually you won't feel it as much in a Western boot, but definitely you'll feel it quite a bit more in a dress shoe at the ball of the foot when it's 3/4 length like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue all these in and everything, get this all cleaned up and everything all around. Obviously there's a little bit of glue in some areas, and for glue we always have these plantation crepe soles like this. This one was one we took off of a shoe and we just parted out, in other words. Always comes in handy. Always with interruptions. But yeah, so tend to reuse and recycle quite a bit. Did you know that cobblers are the oldest form of recycling, or recycling experts, I guess you can say, or whatever you want to call us? But yeah, we have been doing recycling, in other words, long before recycling was even a word. Kind of a fun fact I wanted to mention to everybody. But anyways, yeah, looks like it was just a few little spots because these were a little bit of an iffy shoe and all sorts of craziness done on them, and I was not too happy with as far as the damages and stuff. That footbed was definitely not a fun thing to deal with. But anyways, let me get these glued in and clean them up and everything. Alright everyone, so I've gone ahead and gone through with the Pomadier cream on these guys, and there were some spots. I mean, we did a number already on these, but I don't want to alter them too much from what they were originally. I did touch it up a little bit with some spray dye. It's kind of frowned upon, I know, in the industry, but I'll be honest, cobblers use that stuff all the time. Doesn't matter who they are, but sometimes we have to, and in this case, because this is a corrected grain leather, you can see, I don't know if the camera's showing it all that much or anything, but alright everyone, so we've gone through and touched it up with, well, not this one, but the Pomadier cream. I left it on the other table. I had to come to this one because my camera died and I had to plug it in. But anyways, so I did also touch these up with some spray dye, just a very light coat to kind of even things out, because these are heavily corrected grain leather. I tried fixing everything I could on them, but because they're also a whole cut, they really show just about everything and anything on them. Between being corrected grain and a whole cut, it's kind of a challenging combination. In other words, darker the color, the easier it is, and obviously if it's a full grain, not corrected grain, to really fix up the uppers and stuff. But I don't want to change the characteristics of these shoes too much. I mean, they're really nice, older pair and stuff, and I just don't want to drastically change what's already going on with them. But got the JR soles, JR dovetail combo heels and everything, new footbeds, or new actual hand-stitched hand welted footbeds and everything like that. So these were kind of a handful, and as you guys can tell, maybe that we had moved and everything, so it was kind of a weird transition between trying to get stuff done while moving, and these were one of those shoes that was just like right in between there, where it was just a whole lot going on. but I got them done finally. It took me a while on my end just because way too much going on, but hopefully you had enjoyed the video. I know I wasn't able to show too much fine detail about it because a lot of it was kind of like I have to experiment with it, and it was going to be very hard for me to show you one thing on the video, but then it turns out it's a different thing, and it just was one of those that I had to go back and forth. And even the customer, I didn't know if he would actually want to go ahead and get that footbed replaced or not, because it's an additional cost, definitely. And I've been getting a lot of those in lately. I've got like 3 other pairs lined up where we're having to replace footbeds, and I'm working on them right now, and I think there may be a few more in my lineup as well, and it's not very exciting to have to deal with that. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely give me a thumbs up. That definitely helps with growing our channel. Subscribe, share the video as well, and follow us on all of our other platforms. I'll leave a link in the description to our Linktree page that has all the links to our Facebook, Instagram, our website, everything like that. So definitely check that out, and yeah, we'll see you in the next video.